Guys, how you guys doing? Dr. Franco here, Francis Udua. Okay, I was compelled to make this video I saw on Instagram about this sad story of this lady who has 4 adult kids. I think the first one is 31 and the last one is 19. Mainly were born in like 1994 and 2006 from the first and the last one. And they all have this particular characteristic look. First of all, they look like they are intellectually deficient. They look like they have small heads, medically called microcephaly, and they all have this characteristic lanky, fishy. You know, all 4 of her kids have that. That's quite pathetic. And you know, it was thought-provoking. I read through the comments what I saw on Instagram. I saw people referring possible or attributing possible causes. You know, people mention things like Zika virus, which is caused by the Aedes aegypti, that terrible motherfucking mosquito that causes dengue, chikungunya, you know, and yellow fever, you know. But this can't be Zika virus because it cuts across the 4 kids. If it's just one child, you know, or one of the adults kids, persons, you know, it might have been considered. People also talked about things like torches, toxoplasmosis, rubella, syphilis, HIV, cytomegalovirus, herpes. They're all possible, but the thing about all these conditions I've just mentioned is that if the mother has it, there's a tendency to develop antibodies to it, and it's not likely to cut across all 4 of these disabled, deficient adults. You know, I also saw some kind of hateful comments, like somebody said, last school no be scam. You're actually quite right, school no be scam, but it's quite unfortunate. You know, this lady was born in remote rural part of Ondo State where there's entrenched poverty. You know, that's poverty that goes intergeneration. There's that kind of very terrible poverty, and it's even worse now. She has four kids with illnesses, so it deepens the poverty. It's quite unfortunate. You know, these are the inequitable situations of health systems in Nigeria and across Africa and the world at large. Now, I'd like to go to the meat of the matter. What is the possible cause of this? I'd like to say this is a genetic disease, an autosomal recessive disorder. Now, let me break down what that means. You know, we as in each parent would have a pair of genes, right? Now, it is believed that each of the genes that were contributed to these kids, that they picked a faulty gene, you know, from the mother and the father. And you can't talk about autosomal recessive diseases without talking about the concept of consanguinity. Consanguinity is also can be called cousin marriage. You know, maybe first cousin, second cousin, even third cousins. You know, in some parts of Nigeria, these things happen, like amongst the Fulani. In some parts of Yoruba land, this happens. Now, I am not saying that this is a cousin marriage, but it's a very common cause of autosomal recessive diseases. You know, for instance, where I'm from, in the part of Delta State, people are not allowed to marry from the same village because it's believed that somehow there's a common ancestor. You know, even if you guys met in San Francisco and you come home, the elders will not let that marriage happen. You know, because of the risk of such congenital diseases being inherited, being transmitted genetically. Now, the big question will be, how can this be prevented? You know, in the modern day world, you can go to a geneticist, you can do thankfully we have very high-end genetic testing. I'm talking about the top of the range next generation sequencing technology, where expanded carrier screenings can be done. Now, this kind of screenings can check and detect all kinds of variants, mutations, micro deletions, major deletions, you know, and it checks and it can detect, it cuts across over 300 genetic diseases But the thing is that they're quite pricey and not readily available, but they exist. You know, if you have the resources, if probably you're desirous of having kids, you know, you can meet your primary care physician for them to give you the directives or the direction on how to go about these things. You know, next generation sequencing technology. If it were accessible in Nigeria, I mean, there will be reduced prevalence of such kids born with intellectual developmental diseases. Okay, there are also tests called non-invasive prenatal testing that can help, or that may help to check and screen if the mother may have a child that she's carrying that may have Down syndrome, Edwards syndrome, Patau syndrome. You know, it's even extended now to even include some sex chromosome abnormalities, you know, like Turner, Klinefelter, etc. You know, technology has advanced. These things are available, and it can help limit the risk of such things happening. You know, now let's talk about this lady in question. I would like to know, did she go for antenatal care? You know, at least the basic antenatal care where you can have the mid-trimester anomaly scan, usually done at 20 weeks. You know, that scan alone can help detect if early signs of microcephaly, small head. That is why it's good to be an informed mother. An informed mother is a powerful woman. You know, she determines the health outcomes of her kids. She doesn't wait for disease to happen, she prevents them. An informed mother will actually go for antenatal care. She's not the type that will just go and be like, okay, doctor, you finished the scanning, okay, when is my next appointment? No, she's going to ask, doc, radiologist, sonographer, how is the state of my baby? How is the head growing? Hope everything is all right. She wants to ask, she wants to probe. You know, she can go to the ends of the earth to make sure she has very healthy babies and healthier outcomes. So the basic mid-trimester ultrasound scan may help in cases where you may not be able to have the resources to do the expanded carrier screen or even other tests like non-invasive prenatal testing or even IVF. You know, additionally, if these things are picked early, you know, interventional plannings could be done whereby it could be prevented maybe for future pregnancies, you know, and even the outcomes can be better for the child who is born with such disabilities. You know, in Nigeria, there is a whole lot of inequitable health system. I mean, if you are wealthy, you can access a specialist in a day, in a few hours. But if you are born like in this woman, for instance, in a rural place, you may spend your lifetime not being able to access a specialist. So in this case, it can be prevented. You know, it's good to ask questions, it's good to assess quality health care. If you've liked my talk, you just give it a thumbs up and you may subscribe to my channel, and I'll be dishing out more health informative reels. Thank you very much. Cheers.